Welcome to the Will Coca Podcast. Another 5-Minute Friday starts now. Welcome everybody to another 5-Minute Friday. We made it to Friday. How was your week? My week was a mixture of peaks and valleys. I was talking to one of my mentors this week about moments in our lives that seemed like valleys that ended up being peaks. Early on in my life, I was pretty lost. I really didn't have a direction. I knew I loved music and I loved to be creative, but to be honest, I had a hard time moving on. Change was really difficult for me. At the time I'd gotten a job, I was like 19 or 21, and I thought I'd be perfect for this job. Little did I know that I lacked the tools to do this job appropriately. Now, I really appreciate the vision that others saw in me, the opportunity they gave me to prove to myself that I could do something like this or not. You see, my boss gracefully informed me that at the end of the term they weren't going to renew my contract. And he did it with such grace that it's been a defining moment in my life. Now, at the time, as a young adult, I was not excited about this opportunity to learn from this valley. But it was exactly what I needed in order to shift my life in a different direction that would kind of lead me to where I am today. You know the saying, you don't know what you know until you know it. It's kind of been a reoccurring instance in my life. But the interesting part is I see valleys as sometimes better than the peaks. Sometimes falling from a peak hurts very badly. For instance, I was in my mid-20s and I was working at a great recording studio. I had the confidence of a million men. I was killing it in all terms and purposes. Everything was going right. One day I decided to maybe get a little loose with things. Maybe not pay as close of attention to a session because, let's be honest, I felt it was beneath me. Now I know what you're thinking. You can see that train coming right towards me, but I was oblivious. I made an error that cost the studio a lot of time and money. But most of all, the owner, who was a great mentor to me, decided that maybe this was not a good place for me after all. Now, this wasn't because I wasn't good at what I was doing. It was because I became unteachable. Now, these two moments happened at very two different places in my life. One was a valley and one was a peak. The big question for me has always been, how do I build off these experiences? How do I take these obstacles and make them into something positive? Ryan Holiday is one of my favorite authors who's written titles such as The Daily Stoic, Obstacles the Way, and Ego's the Enemy. He has this to say about turning that obstacle into something positive.
So if we take it for granted that life is going to knock us on our ass sometimes, that we're going to do everything right and everything that could possibly go wrong does go wrong, if we're going to face disaster, then the question is, how do we respond to disaster? We've talked about how the Stoics sort of respond to bad news, but just managing the response to me is like only part of it and the least interesting part. I think the powerful thing is, how do we take these disasters and turn them, as the Stoics famously did, into opportunities as almost fuel for greatness.
So what can be perceived as a failure, whether it be a peak or a valley, can be actually fuel for greatness. I don't think I would have the opportunities I have today if it weren't for those failures. I don't think I'd be able to pursue the life I want to pursue today if I didn't have those experiences as fuel for greatness. Peaks and valleys. So maybe they're not that different after all. Maybe they're just opportunities for us to gather fuel for greatness. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's been another 5-Minute Friday.